again, my name is Francesca Lo Basso, and I'm with National Nurses United. I'm a political organizer for them. I'm in their government relations department, and the Robin Hood tax is one of our main issues that we're working on. And sometimes, people ask, what does that have to do with the nurses? Why are nurses involved? And, for us, our work really comes from a place of I guess the thing that our members always say is that as nurses, their number one priority is as patient advocates. So, they've really noticed over the last few years in particular how much sicker their patients are getting and how fewer and fewer people have health insurance or access to health care on a regular basis. All of those issues, and so they really were able to see that there's something foundational here that's a problem. And so the idea of the Main Street contract emerged, which was this idea to take care of Main Street instead of Wall Street. So the Robin Hood tax is a part of that, as the funding mechanism with which to provide support and care for Main Street. So that's just a little bit of background on that. And so now I'll go through my PowerPoint. Next slide, please. And so this is just a brief overview of the campaign. So there's a lot of words on this slide, I apologize, but basically, we know that there's a problem. I don't think anyone can say that, our country is in the best shape, our economic system is working for everyone. I think we all know it's not, and I think we all know that, Wall Street is a huge part of the problem. There's been immense greed, and there's been, a lot of unstable, unsafe, dangerous practices happening with money. And it's really impacting all of us. So that's where the Robin Hood tax comes from. Is that we have people in the financial sector who are who made some bad gambles and got taken care of by our tax dollars. And now what happens? We're suffering, and they're still worried about their own profits. Next slide. So what do we do? So the Robin Hood tax is really about tax fairness. I was just having a conversation over lunch about how we pay sales tax on everything. Like, I paid sales tax on the shirt I'm wearing to buy this notebook. We all do this, but people who are buying $1 million products like stocks and bonds and things like that don't pay any tax on that. So obviously it's a regressive system and it's unfair. And so just simply, tax fairness is, I think, it shouldn't be too much to ask for. So that's sort of baseline. But also it can take care of and fund the services that we need. So next slide. So we need it now. I think that goes without saying that. I think there always seems to be urgency around a lot of issues. We're just talking about environmental issues over lunch. I think that we need to take better care of our communities and provide for our future, which we're currently destroying by destroying our planet and not having a stable economic system. And I think, for me, I know I'm so young, and yet I can still see how things are getting worse, and how my little sister is going to have tons more student debt than the ton I already have, and all of these issues. So there really is a need to act now, and I think that, that's why you're here. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the tax actually is. So it's a sales tax, simply put. The sort of technical economic term for the Robin Hood tax is a financial transaction tax, because the way the tax would actually work is that you would have a tax on the transfer of the ownership of the security. So it's specifically on stocks and bonds and a few particular financial instruments. And the mechanism comes in, during that exchange. So it works very similarly to a sales tax. Next slide. So there is actually a bill, bless you. There is a bill in Congress, H.R. 1579, which is better known as the Inclusive Prosperity Act, and that is, the lead sponsor is Representative Ellison from Minnesota. And talking about a tax obviously means a change in the tax code. So we would need an act of Congress to change that, very simply put. So our strategy has to be focused around pressuring particular legislators that are in, on particular committees, Ways and Means, Appropriations, that have control over money, and urging these decision makers to move forward. So we, within a year and a half, honestly, of this campaign being in existence, which I think is a pretty incredibly short amount of time, we have this bill which encompasses all of our goals. And the two main components of it are that it creates a more fair tax system. It has a very low rate on stocks and bonds and derivatives, and it also has a credit for an individual who makes less than $50,000 a year, or a couple making less than $75,000. So I don't know anybody. I don't have stocks, so we built the credit in there so that to sort of try and push back against conservative arguments about how this is just another tax on the poor. Although I don't know how many poor people have a stock portfolio, but sure, okay. So anyway, so that's in there. You can go on to the next slide. Yeah, this just talks more about the credit. You can go on. This is the rate in the Ellison bill. It's incredibly minuscule. It's 0.5% on stocks, so 50 cents for a $100 trade. 0.1% on bonds, so 10 cents for a $100 trade, and half of a penny on $100 in derivatives, the speculative market, in that trading. So it's tiny. This is not breaking anyone's bank, particularly not breaking the bank of people who are literally making millions of dollars a day. So, this is not some crazy scheme. I think it could generate clear amounts of wealth. And the projections from the economists who helped develop the bill are that this tax rate would generate up to $350 billion a year. Billion, with a B. Think of all the things we could do with that money. We're talking about Social Security and Medicare, and I would love some student debt relief, and maybe actually make college free for people in the future and help address the impacts of the climate crisis, and all of that. There's so much we could do with this money. One of our main partners in the Robin Hood Tax campaign is this group Health Gap, which works on ending the AIDS crisis by making HIV/AIDS medication accessible. And the thing that really hits home to me is that there's studies that came out recently that said if they had $2 billion more a year going towards making HIV and AIDS medication more accessible globally, we could end AIDS within 30 years. We can end AIDS in our lifetime if they could just get $2 billion more a year. So they just need that sliver of $2 billion, and then we still have $348 billion for the rest of us to have. I think that would be so incredible to actually have funding for what we need. You can go to the next slide, please. So you can go to the next slide. So I don't want to talk too much longer because I realize I'm cutting into other people's time. So you can go to the next slide. This is just a series of, a couple of main points of what this tax can do. You can go to the next slide. Basically, it's just, what I was saying earlier, tax fairness creates this giant progressive revenue stream. It actually will have a positive impact on the economy because it will slow down the really risky speculative trading where, trade's happening on the millisecond, and it's not actually being invested into anything. It's actually just being traded back and forth between computers, but this disincentivizes that crazy risk-taking and actually forces economists to think long-term about where their money's going. And can go to preserve important programs that we need. You can go to the next slide, please. So who's in the campaign? You can go to the next slide. These are all the countries that currently have this financial transaction tax, otherwise known as the Robin Hood tax. This isn't a pipe dream. This isn't a crazy, lefty idea. It's common sense. Countries need revenue, and we need to support our people and our communities, and all of these countries already have it, and many of them are expanding it because of the economic global crisis. They realize they need revenue to support it, and the United States actually had this tax from 1916 until 1960, or 1914 until 1962 or 64. And it was actually, in this financial transaction tax that we had for 60 or so years, was increased during the Great Depression to help get out of the economic depression. So it's not a new idea. It's just like our political culture has changed, not logic. You can go forward. You can skip through this. So this is just a list of all of the different, you can keep going, tons and tons of people. We have 175 different organizations around the country who are part of this campaign. National Nurses United, my union, and Health Gap, who I mentioned earlier, and National People's Action are the three core organizations, but we work with about 170 other groups around the country. This is just a few of them. The Grey Panthers are wonderfully one of our supporters, so we've done some fun work with them in the past. You can skip forward. So, and just why Robin Hood, the image works. People know what it means. If you put on a Robin Hood hat, and people know what you're talking about, and we found the imagery to be really powerful. You can skip ahead. So, yeah. I think those are the main points I wanted to make. I have I'm good. I'll stop talking now. We can get into question and answer after that. But just so you know, I have a handout that's just a quick overview of the campaign, and also these cards. This is actually if you want to volunteer to be part of the campaign and learn more and help give presentations and laundry list of things that we would love for you to do. You can fill out one of these volunteer cards. So I can hand that out later. Thank you.